name is popular. I think he's done a great job of like making himself be mysterious and not even in the conversation. I think
like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it's like just now with the internet. Like, think about this. This is fascinating. This is how you know that guy got some influence and control. We know everything about Jeffrey Epstein, everything about Ghislaine Maxwell. I got bikini pictures of Ghislaine Maxwell, right?
Yeah, you do.
Nobody even knows George Soros. They barely know his upbringing. They kind of like, this guy is actively supporting these district attorneys in these liberal cities and destroying the fabric of these liberal cities and these liberal states. If he's doing that and we got one picture of him, that's different level. And it is possible that a guy like that is at odds with the people that want America to be successful. And he's found a way to profit off of this. And who knows? I don't know why they would even let a guy like that exist. If there is an all-powerful they that's trying to protect America, why would they let him exist? Who the fuck is he? Can you tell me who he is?
Oh, there's no way in the world. Like right now, if you look at, are you familiar with ESG, DEI, and CEI?
No, is that a new
I
gay
didn't
thing?
even know what the fuck you just said, to be honest. That phrase just came out of your mouth.
Lesbian, gay.
Let's talk about tequila. The best kind of tequila sitting out there. I don't know if you guys had it this last Sunday one. We gotta have it afterwards. So apparently these guys, if you're not, they're mixologists, is what you guys are.
Yeah.
It's this protein drink. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah.
With Celsius and tequila is what you guys drink every day. I'm so impressed by this, what you were saying.
Yeah.
So go back to this. Okay, so ESG, CEI, and DEI, okay? ESG is about environmental something group that's out there to making sure companies are making the right decisions. So Larry Fink and BlackRock say things like, we're gonna force people to do the right thing. There's a video of him saying this. We have to use force to make companies do the right thing. DEI is called your diversity, equity, and inclusive score. How good of a job you do here, this will be a good score.
We're doing pretty good.
You know, we're doing really good here all around. This will be a great score here, okay?
Yeah.
Except one of you guys, two of you guys has to be gay.
You don't know how we
so that's the one
identify.
part. So we got one of you guys got to make a decision here. Okay.
Yeah.
So then you have CEI, Corporate Equity Index score. Okay, so what the hell does this mean? So Dylan Mulvaney, okay?
Yeah.
Goes out there and gets the drinks from Bud Light.
Yeah.
Dylan Mulvaney didn't do anything wrong, okay? Dylan Mulvaney just got the Bud Light drinks. He's like, listen, great.
Yeah.
So Dylan does what Dylan does, and he's on Drew Barrymore, and he's doing all this stuff, and he's doing his, stretches and all these weird stretches that we can't do. And anyway, so Bud Light comes in, he's drinking. People on the other side lose their minds. What the hell was this all about?
Yeah.
Why are you doing? And the VP of marketing for Anheuser-Busch comes out and says, well, look, here's what we have to do. Let's face it. A lot of the beer drinkers are these frat, we just kind of have to find another audience, and we couldn't do with this. What the hell are you talking about? Who drinks Bud Light? You forgot who your audience is. No problem. They did that to get a higher ESG score because Anheuser-Busch is one of only 20 companies in America with a perfect 100 score. So watch what happens. Then the CEO of Anheuser-Busch, former Marine, former CIA officer, okay, is the Anheuser-Busch CEO. Sharp guy, comes out and they do the horse commercial, okay? They're like, no, we're going back to horses, more horses. And then he makes a statement about the fact that we're this, we love America, we'll do all this other stuff. Perfect. Bud Light's numbers are down 28%. 28%. Coors Light is up. Then when Bud Light is now backtracking about the fact that they lost their customers, which is vets, Americans, just regular beer drinkers who don't even think about politics.
Yeah.
I just want to have a beer. I love America. Then when he made the apology and the ESG folks took it as apology, they said, nope, Anheuser-Busch officially lost their perfect score. They had a chance to stand up for themselves and really do something about this and defend the transgender community. They did not. We're lowering their score. Okay. So now it's like, what the hell do we do? Here's the problem what they did. Rather than understanding who your audience is and making sure your audience is happy with the customer, with the product that you're selling, you try to make ESG happy. So who's behind ESG? Larry Fink, BlackRock, all these guys. But the HRC score, which is the DEI score and the CI score, HRC is a company that gives these scores. HRC, human rights something. If you Google what HRC stands for, I don't know what the C stands for. It's Human Rights Community, Human Rights
Campaign.
Human Rights Campaign. Human Rights Campaign goes and gives the scores, and they tell you what you need to do to improve your score of ESG within your company. So guess who gave $100 million to HRC? I want to say in 2012, you can verify this. In 2012, HRC, that dictates what your scores are and comes and scores these people, was given $100 million by this guy named George, last name Soros. Okay. So what, Pat? What's the big deal behind this? So, then we go to a complete different space. You look at Hollywood, what announcement they just made, right? I don't know if you guys saw the announcement they made last week. Hollywood made an announcement, the Academies made an announcement last week. Moving forward, for you to be considered to win an Oscar, you have to have a third of your crew or the main actors or even supporting cast or even people behind the camera be part of the underrepresented community, which the underrepresented community is LGBTQ. I think it's women, it's Black, it's disabled, it's all these things that they have, right? Yeah. If you don't have a third be a part of that, guess what? You are not able to get nominated for an Oscar, which means, if we go to Titanic, would have never been nominated and would have never won. If we go to Godfather, it's not going to happen. If we go to all the, Saving Private Ryan, not going to happen. You go to all these great movies that have won Oscars, that'll never happen. So what does this do? A Richard Dreyfuss comes out and says, wait a minute, what are you talking about? The whole concept of being creative was for me to be let loose so I can do what I'm doing. By the way, here's a part that Hollywood has completely lost their minds. Do you know why movies in America went to Hollywood? Do you know the story behind why we make movies in Hollywood in the 20s? Do you know how this happened?
Nobody would hire the Jews. So the Jews went out and made Hollywood.
But where did they escape from? Where did they leave and who dictated the rules? You know who dictated the rules of Hollywood and movie making?
Who?
A guy named Thomas Edison from Jersey. They left Jersey because Thomas Edison had all these guidelines of making stuff that you had to do. You have to go through this, you have to go through that. They controlled all of it. You can type in Thomas Edison, 1920, Jersey, Hollywood leaving, you'll see the article. So they go to Hollywood.
Edison, like the light bulb?
Like the Edison. Yes, Edison.
So
did you
Edison,
find it? Did you find the article, Edison?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah, so Edison, the light bulb Edison guy, forces the creatives. Are like, dude, let me alone. Let me just go make what I want to make. Why are you doing this to me? Let's go find this one city called Hollywood. They go to Hollywood. In 1920, 95% of all motion picture movies were made in Hollywood. They gave the double to Jersey and to Edison. They go to Hollywood. They make the movies today. Yep. Wow. Thomas Edison drove the film industry to Hollywood.
Wow.
They left him. So here's what's crazy. From 95% of motion pictures being built in Hollywood to now 50%, 55%. People are leaving Hollywood to different cities. They're sick of this game that's being played. So people forget, go back and figure out why Hollywood started in the first place.
Because you made it too difficult to make movies here. Now you're doing it again.
Now you're doing it too.
And why? What does George want from this? Is he profit driven? I don't understand his.
I have my own opinion.
Yes, please. What is your own opinion?
For me, okay, so there's a lot of different fears people have. There's a fear about overpopulation. Oh, that's one of the biggest fears that we have was overpopulation. Elon Musk comes out and talks about the underpopulation. We need people.
Declining population.
If you go really look at the founder of Planned Parenthood and see what the hell vision was and how she was worried about all these kids being made. And if you see her interview with Wallace, just go watch this 26-minute interview with Wallace and you'll see what she says. When he asked the question, do you believe there's such a thing as a sin? Do you think we're committing sin by preventing these kids? No, I think we're doing the right thing because these kids shouldn't be born in this difficult life and all this other stuff. No problem. Statistically speaking, and then morally speaking, I'll give you statistically first and then we'll go morally. Statistically, China, when you look at their population, a inverted pyramid is when a society is healthy, meaning a pyramid is where society is healthy, meaning the youngest at the bottom, 0 to 4 in China in 1950, the biggest percentage of the China's population in 1950, you can pull this up as well, was 0 to 4, okay? Then it's 5 to 8 and all this other stuff, right, when you look at their age. So today, China's the complete opposite.
They have tons of old people, not enough young people to support them.
And their cost of Medicare just 20 years ago was $500 billion. Last year was $8 trillion. They don't know what to do with this. They're dealing with this 4-to-1 rule, which is for every one kid, he has to take care of 2 of his parents and 4 of his grandparents. But 1978, 1979, they came up with the one-child policy. China took it. They used to do 4, 5, 6 kids.
Yeah.
Per now, it's 1.1 is where they are. So in U.S., do they want to
Oh shit! Is this our democratic free way of combating a rising population?
by getting?
You see what China's, well, this is the shit that I'm talking about. This is, just a second ago, we were talking about how do you plan out 100 years? And who are these figures that are planning out 100 years? In America, we can't say you're just gonna have one kid because we put freedom in the fucking Constitution in the beginning. And I know the powers that be right now are like, what fucking idiots did that 1776? This made my life so difficult. Now I got to manipulate Americans into doing something that they might not want to do through the guise of freedom, right? So holy shit, they see the advantage that China might have by reducing their population. We have to find a way to reduce our population.
Great
and now you got
strategy.
women on the streets going, scoop those babies out of your uterus.
By the way, that's one though.
Fuck me.
Planned Parenthood would be one element. You know what the other one is? Here's what the other one is.
Gays.
Okay, you saw Bill Maher talking. Bill Maher, by the way, you saw what Bill Maher talked about? Have you ever seen the statistic by generation? Which generation has the most LGBTQ members? Have you seen this? Can you pull up LGBTQ community by generations, okay?
Yeah.
And then Bill Maher says, listen, at this pace by 2047, we're all going to be gay, okay? Because that's just kind of, it used to be 0.5%, then 1% of the generation, then it's 2%, then it's 4%, then it's 5%, then now it's like 24% of the generation is LGBT.
So the pushback someone would give for this argument is those were times when being gay was not accepted.
Yeah.
And now's the time when it's being accepted. So all those people that were in the closet have now come out the closet. That's the pushback that someone would give to that statistic.
And the flip on that would be there's a major, churches are losing today to the church of LGBTQology, okay?
Mm-hmm.
These guys are baptizing people into their community better than anybody else is doing it. I had a guest on the podcast from Gays Against Groomers. This guy was on. He says, I'm gay, totally gay. Our communities, we're all gay. You know, lesbians and gays is what we are. But here's what we don't like. We don't like putting that into people's thoughts, people's schooling, like books right now. You buy a book, it's called It's Normal or Gay BCs, and it says, here's how boys have sex with boys at 10 years old. Here's how girls will have sex with pictures and images in the book, by the way.
Yeah.
And, you know, some parents are sitting there saying, look, man, it's a few things you got to know. I teach my kids. I raise my kids. It ain't your job. This ain't no village. These are not your kids. These are my kids. So you either have to subscribe to the fact that these are your kids are America's kids or your kids are your kids. If you subscribe to the idea that your kids are America's kids, let them groom your kids. No problem. Be at it. But if you think these are your kids, then you got to raise your kids with the values and principles that you got.
Yeah.
You pick and choose. That is a form, that is a philosophy that you got to make a decision which one you're more comfortable with. A lot of parents are not, this is why people are moving to Florida. And this is why some of the guys are more comfortable being in Florida than in some of these other states. Some states are fighting this. So again, going back to this conversation started with George Soros, then he went to ESG, then he went to DEI, CEI, then HRC, then coming down to the depopulation, all this stuff. Who knows what their motives are, but some are thinking this could be one of them.
And that's George Soros wants to depopulate in America.
George Soros wants an open society because he is a globalist that would like to have an open borders, open society. If you Google Open Society Foundation, that's the foundation that gave HRC $100 million. He started Open Society.
And why would that benefit him and the people that agree with him?
How would that benefit him and the people? I don't think it's about how we can go there as well. And by the way, everything I'm saying from here on is purely opinion and speculation.
Feelings, no facts on this show.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. No, but look, would some people who are driven by power, would they rather control 330 million people or 8 billion people?
So, okay, so here's where we go. Most people, regardless if we think they are good or bad, convince themselves that they are being benevolent. Nobody goes, I'm a bad guy.
Totally agree.
Right?
I totally agree.
So where does he see his benevolence?
So 2 nights ago, whatever the night was when the Celtics played Miami Heat and the Celtics beat them, what was that, 2 nights ago?
Yep.
I didn't tune into the game. I watched the George Soros documentary, came 2019, 4 years ago. Worth watching. Starts off with painting him as an evil guy, ends with he's a philanthropist, cares about the world, cares about America. Well, here goes to another Chelsea handler story for you. When his mom, when he was a young kid, I think he was 9 years old, and his mom had two, I want to say, Russians or two Germans, I think two Germans raped his mother. And she told him the story, and he is apparently lived out with the story. You know, those kinds of enemies, the loyalty isn't to you, the loyalty isn't to anything. The loyalty is to, that happened to my mom, and my mom sold me these beliefs, and my mom believed in me. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure my mom's dream becomes a reality, because that is an emotional story that I'm going to tell myself over and over and over again until it becomes a reality, right? Like,
what was his mom's dream?
It's not about what his mom's dream was. His mom, you know, the hatred she had, the pain that the mom and the trauma she went through by being raped by two German soldiers. I think it's German or Russian. You can look it up on which one it is. So in the documentary, they're kind of telling that story. And then he eventually reads a book by a man, I don't know his name, that talks about the concept of open society. If you type in George Soros open society, you know, the book he read, it'll come up with the story.
The more accepting and open we are with one another, the less chance that this will ever happen again.
Yes.
To anybody, not just someone that I care about. Okay.
There it is right there. Karl Popper's 1945 book, The Open Society and Its Enemies.
I was just pulling that book, Karl Popper, The Open Society and Its Enemies. First part is about Plato, critiquing Plato's Republic and a number of other dialogues by Plato. He misses the point about Plato's Republic, which is not surprising, as many astute philosophers and historians have throughout the centuries. But nonetheless, it's a very interesting book. And I do have a couple.
Was he talking about Karl Popper?
You did mention Popper there at the end.
The open society concept?
Mm-hmm. Which I'm trying to bring up that specific in the book.
I only have I have a couple copies of his Alchemy of Finance. This is not the one where he talks about being a messiah, but I thought it did talk about Popper. But there's no index, so it makes it hard to find. So Jorge Soros might be acting out childhood traumas, Tony. He certainly wasn't traumatized by going around and collecting people and taking their property, though. That was the greatest time of his life. Or so he said on 60 Minutes.
That's what he said. We have to go with what he said. There's not much.
You got to listen to what the man said.
Else.
So he might be a savior. I mean, I haven't seen that documentary. Now I'm interested to see that, but I've seen the other side where he pretends to be a philanthropist and actually is someone with a God complex acting out his messianic fantasies, I think is how he describes it in the LA Times article of 2011. He's got a God complex.
God, we talked about that last week. That was when he brought that up on Joe Rogan. And so, that's.
When your wife was in the operating room and you prayed to God, I am God. That was an Alec Baldwin line from back in the 90s. Forget what the movie was. Malice. The movie was called Malice, I think.
So here's just a quick introduction. This will give an idea of some of the philosophy these individuals take. The Open Society and Its Enemies by Karl Popper. Just the very first page. I'm not going to go into details.
The Open Society and Its Enemies by Karl Popper.
And
I'll bring up
it's right
Karl.
here. And I have I have this really nice book cam, but I'm not able to get all the.
Now here's Karl Popper.
To work right now. All my cameras.
He's a positivist.
Yep.
He's fully on board with the solipsistic journey that
connected. He was sort of like the
oh, here it is right here.
Herman Kahn to George Soros. I mean, but then it's
here's
Herman
the answer
Kahn
right here. This is what Tony's talking about. The Open Society and Its Enemies by Karl Popper, 1945. And then from there, you see his influence from Mises to Hayek, and then Popper, and
George Soros.
This is talked about
Society Foundations, because he sees himself as these key social engineers. I mean, that's sort of what the book is talking about.
If you're in the audience and you're a nerd, what you want to do is seek out this video right here, Cybernetics. This is delivered by Professor Umpleby.
That's a classic.
And you're going to learn some history about Karl Popper, Bateson, all the Macy conference guys on cybernetics. and command and control of human beings is the gist. Okay. So
Actual
like
book
when
title.
you strip away all these other layers of Soros, what they show you in the documentary, it's about cybernetics. It's about command and control of the human beings. And the book that I bought, or not bought, but the book that I brought for Kurt was this book, because I wanted to show him that what we're talking about today, as far as the control of the society through alternate means other than truth, they've long sought after this goal of controlling the minds of the youth, which then, you know, after a couple generations, those are the people that are the NPCs of today. So this book was printed in 1945. It's called The Continuing Battle for the Control of the Mind of the Youth. And this is written by a muckraking author, journalist called Porter Sargent. And this book is very rare. Let me see if I can get the title page open. It's a handbook of private schools for the American boys and girls. And it basically outlines this private initiative, the present state of education, and then how they wanted to change it to have command and control, the struggle for control of the minds of the youth, command and control of human beings. This is cybernetics. This is what Soros's underlying theory is all about. Reflexivity versus reactionary trends. And in here, the quote that I had marked for you guys reads as follows. Now, this is from page 50. Quite different are the views of educational reform presented in the educational press of England from those that are put out in this country. The latter, for the most part, emanate from that great and skillful organization in Rockefeller Plaza, British Information Services, an agency of the British government. Isn't that interesting, Tony, that the British government operates out of the Rockefeller offices? And this is at the same time that the British had the British Security Coordination, MI6, was controlling OSS from the Rockefeller Plaza during World War II. This book's from 1945. This is written concurrent to those things going on. The infiltration of our country, the use of assassins to eliminate political ne'er-do-wells who might crush their narrative back in the day. So there's a long history, but this whole book is about going in and combating this authoritarianism that had been found to have infected our education system and turning it into the indoctrination. And indoctrination for what? To make our attitudes such that we could be blended with the British
Porter
Empire.
Sargent.
Yeah, it's Porter Sargent. I got
Yeah,
a bunch of his books.
Yeah, I have a couple of his. It's interesting because like this would be the application of the open society sociological paradigm. And I'll just give a quick flavor. I did find a PDF of it, so just to back up what you're saying, Rich.
Well, Soros is just a Renfield being a useful idiot to an ongoing plan, which, you know, he's an instrument in the orchestra.
Well, this is like the philosophical basis. So this would be like the people behind the scenes teaching Soros sort of like his ideological perspective, giving him the sort of like the Herman Kahn to Henry Kissinger sort of idea. It says here, just on page 1, it sketches some of the difficulties faced by a civilization which aims at humanness and reasonableness, at equality and freedom, a civilization which is still in its infancy and which continues to grow in spite of the fact that it has been betrayed by so many of the intellectual leaders of mankind. It attempts to show, that is this book, that this civilization has not fully recovered from the shock of its birth, the transition from tribal or closed, quote-unquote, closed society, with its submission to magical forces to the quote-unquote open society, which sets free the critical powers of man. So they're sort of alluding to the Enlightenment idealization or doctrine, that somehow we went from, you know, a mythopoeic past, a past of superstition, to one of science and reason. You see sort of the parallels here, which sets free the critical powers of man. Continuing forward, it says it attempts to show that the shock of this transition is one of the factors that have made possible for the rise of those reactionary movements, which have tried and still try to overthrow civilization and return to tribalism. That's interesting. And suggests that it suggests that what we call nowadays totalitarianism begins with these movements, which are just as old as young, or just as young as our civilization itself. And it says here, just to finish it up, it tries thereby to contribute to our understanding of totalitarianism and of significance of the perennial fight against it. It further tries to examine the application of the critical and rational methods of science to the problems of the open society. It analyzes the principles of democratic social reconstruction, the principles of what I may term piecemeal social engineering, in opposition to utopian social engineering, as explained in Chapter 9. And it tries to clear away some of the obstacles impeding a rational approach to the problems of social reconstruction. And so it gets into all these ideas of historicism, reactionary forces in history, so forth and so on. But it sort of sets up this really strange straw man where it's like, well, there's these closed societies. They were the superstitious in the past, but then then the Enlightenment happened, right? Or the Renaissance lead us into the Enlightenment era, and the Enlightenment project ended with reason and democratic societies. How do we fight against totalitarian societies like Soviet Russia or like Nazi Germany or Maoist China? Well, okay, one of the ways in which we can do it is by appealing to rational and scientific discourse. So it sets up this very strange, it's like a bait and switch. So it's like without rationality, we wouldn't have a social democratic society, which is in itself a form of collectivism, by the way. We're a constitutional republic, first and foremost. But beyond those technical details, it then doesn't, it sort of presents this idea that we can use reason and science to appeal to a utopian social engineering versus a piecemeal social engineering. So it's sort of bait and switch. It's like, oh, we'll fight tyranny by actually creating a worse tyranny, and we'll call that the open society.
It's like 2 + 2 = 5, Tony.
Yeah, kind of. And that's what
these are, get people to believe it.
That's what Karl Popper does, and
that's logical positivism.
If you want to see, it is logical positivism. I'll go scump. Everyone read Batty Banner's article in regards to SBF and like where they get this philosophy of at least applied to ethics.
And then from logical positivism, you get the Frankfurt School. Kurt was talking about the Frankfurt School, right?
That's right.
Huh? It's almost like all these things connect together, Tony. With education, they connect together with education.
Oh yeah, it's good. Frankfurt School, populated through the various colleges in the 30s and 40s when they came over to America, and that is in essential gave birth to postmodernism in the 60s. Was the Frankfurt School critical theory,
like this postmodernism that then brought us microaggression theory and deconstructivism or postmodern religion like wokeism.
Every form of studies when it comes to African American studies or women's studies, LGBTQ studies, or whatever studies that's these liberal arts colleges and these universities, they're all, you can attribute almost all of them to postmodernism, which really comes out of the critical theory, which comes out of the 30s with the Frankfurt School. So you can see, there's an unfortunate chain of destructive philosophical ideas and various philosophers that have commenting on them or perpetuating them in various forms throughout the 20th century.
Well, Soros got hacked a couple years back, and thousands of the files were released where you find out that he has some racist policies against Israel, Tony, which makes it interesting when people say you can't talk about Soros because that's anti-Semitic. It's like, no, Soros is anti-Semitic. This would be pro-Israel to talk about. And then I think maybe you got to think it through some more. They have a world plan. It's not like a couple countries. Like the Open Society Foundations is about the whole world. It's not. Now they got to attack America with some of that money for sure, and they got to put some money into Ukraine because that's an ongoing 40-year project he's got, right? But it's a world project, and the people that he works for, that he fronts for, they want to control the whole world. But to do that, they got to go through America. America's standing in the way, So Soros has to fund things through his foundation, through another foundation, like the American Bridge 21st Century Foundation, where money went to this pizza place that was mentioned in relation to this woman and her emails to Hillary Clinton, the HRC that we're talking about, not the Human Rights Commission, the Hillary Rodham Clinton. That Clinton Foundation that was started by Jeffrey Epstein and got $100 million, not from George Soros, but from HSBC, after HSBC got caught laundering a whole bunch of drug money. And they brought James Comey on the board and they said, let's give $100 million to Hillary. So these front companies, these foundations, they're all connected behind the scenes. It's a small group of people flocking these kids. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions. We can get into the show, we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come